was at the top of the echelon, and then all of a sudden I became like canceled. They didn't have the term canceled there, but I was canceled.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning, this is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. We're going to jump right into it. Today we have an amazing guest who we're gonna have a conversation about intelligence, not just any type of intelligence, but spiritual intelligence, or the immaterial type of intelligence, that thing that dives a bit deeper than the surface. In my personal journey, I was about 19 years old, and I was lost. Graduated high school. College was not really for me. I got kicked out of college twice. And I remember laying in the bed, I was depressed. My grandmother had just died. I was 18 or 19 years old. All those years kind of rambled in together. I went to stay in Virginia for a little while because just trying to figure it out. My dad got me a job. I was my first real job, landscaping on a Navy base in Virginia. And that you're talking about some really difficult work. That summer made me realize that I needed to work with my mind and my physical body, because I would get beat up every day. And in the midst of that, I got into some trouble, and I had some stuff happening that got myself involved in, and things are easy to get involved in, hard to get out of. And it was there. It wasn't in a church. It was in the midst of all of these dark times, and it was really, really dark. And started to contemplate, why was I here? Like, what was my purpose? My grandmother had just gone, and I didn't see any purpose. Like, fresh out of the projects, it didn't. I mean, if you saw me then, I smoked like a pack and a half of cigarettes a day, partied all weekend, and just in this loop, in this dark, what we call a soul of the night loop. And boom, in the midst of that time, I found that I was not just living, I had a purpose. And for atheists, they probably wouldn't say spirit or whatever, but for me, my spirit was awakened. And I remember crying and saying, all right, I don't know what this is, because I didn't know what it was. I grew up in church, but I didn't know what was happening to me personally. And that day changed my life. I had more dark times. I had more bad times, but I had an anchor that I can lean on, or at least the beginning points of an anchor that I can lean on. My journey in this path began to start from that moment. Um, and I'll never forget it. And I wouldn't change anything from it. I'm nowhere near the same person I was when I was 19. In fact, I can't even really wrap my mind around that person. But that person still exists in me, because I am that person. I'm just that voice is not as loud as it used to be. That voice used to be really, really loud. It yelps every now and again, but almost in the. So today we're going to talk to Yossi. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm just captivated by your story and appreciate your vulnerability and sharing it. And Yeah, we're coming up on the darkest days of the year, the solstice, and I like to say, you got to dive into the dark to discover your sacred spark.
Mhm.
And when in the darkest moments, the smallest light is visible. Even a small spark becomes so visible when it's super dark. So somehow you went into the darkest and something got sparked. And yeah, it took many years to integrate, and we go back and forth. And your story is not really that different than mine, but it's different in some ways. But I also had to hit bottom and be depressed and the dark night of the soul before I had my awakening experience. So this is well understood in the literature and in many places. I mean, you might have heard of people like Eckhart Tolle, and and he was homeless, living on a park bench, and so on. Had his awakening experience to transform his life and get enlightened. So this is it's tough to go through it, but in hindsight, you're gonna look back and is that was that me? Is that real? Is that a different life? Am I really the same person? And as you said, that part is still lives in us, and but it's not. We don't identify with it anymore. It's a voice, and we can kind of treat it with compassion and reframe how we look at the whole thing, because in some ways, your greatest gift was born out of that darkness,
Mhm.
and your mission and your purpose, and that inspired you to want to share your experience, and your ability to share this and normalize it, I'm sure, is helping many others that are wondering, am I crazy? Am I the only one that's crazy? So this is now part of your gift. This is part of our sacred wound. We that pain, that trauma, you know, that horrible thing becomes part of what breaks our heart open so we could share our gifts.
Thank you for that. You have the have had an interesting career where you get to help many people through their as a guide, as a teacher. Um, what what fuels you? What keeps your energy guarded as you, because that's an exchange. Sometimes I'm pretty sure you leave working with people and you can be drained, right? But how do you protect your space, your mindset, your energy?
Well, yeah, sometimes I get depleted, but I gotta do self-care, and I gotta ask myself, what is my gift, and what
Mm,
what and what is mine to do. And I've been in the shoes of the people I try and help. I've been a CEO, I've been a founder, I try to build a company, and I've seen the challenges and the loneliness and the pressure of having investors and customers, employees and partners and communities, and all these pressures that one has to do in building a company. And that's why I got burnt out working 70, 80 hours a week, and I hit my dark night of the soul, and I was depressed. And one day I couldn't show up to work.
mm,
I just had 150, 200 employees. The internet was just coming on. Our company was doing these personalized newspapers. So you would have NaRon's personal newspaper would come on your fax machine. This is probably ancient technology for most people now, but you'd get your personal newspaper, and it was interactive, and you told your agent which was relevant or not, and it would learn. But anyway, so then the internet came, and it was all going to be ad supported and free. So that was a big threat to our business model, and I was paralyzed. And then my employees were like, "Well, what are we going to do now? And where are we going to go? And how we're going to survive? And how we're going to thrive?" And I just wanted to get in bed and pull the cover over my head and hide. So I couldn't face up to it. So I disappeared for a week or two, and my employees were like, "What the heck happened to Yossi? He was our founder, he was our visionary, he was our leader." but I just couldn't face them because I didn't know what to tell them. I didn't know the answers. I was just paralyzed with fear. But anyway, long story short, but that for me was the start of changing my path and starting to do some self-care every day, because until then I was working 70, 80 hours a week, waking up, not eating anything, just having my coffee, running to work. And uh and then I realized this is a sure way to burn out. And without investing in myself, I couldn't really have the resources and the mind to come up with a new strategy for the business. So it was my depression, that running away, that was the turning point. And so sometimes you got to hit bottom to know that this you got to go back up. And that's what happened to me. And so, but anyway, my point is that I see my clients now and they kind of face some of the same challenges and pressures and burnout. And I've been in their shoes and I know the pain and the suffering for themselves and their teams and their employees, and hundreds of employees are behind them. And when they are in that frozen, fearful place, reactive, they're not leading from inspiration or purpose or community. And so it's their suffering and the suffering of all others. And so I'm like, I can relate to this. And I've been in their shoes and I want to help them. Our hearts, are just naturally compassionate. So, yeah, it can be draining at times, but it's also very nurturing, because at the end of every day, when I go to bed and I think of my day and I think, oh, I had this meeting and I helped this person, and I could see the impact on them, and I can imagine the impact it's going to have on their team and their employees and how it ripples out throughout the world. And that feeds me. And then I ask my soul, my spirit, my higher self, show me what is mine to do.
Mm.
You know, let thy will be done, they say in religious term. Not my will, thy will. But when I align myself with the what the universe is asking of me, then I have the whole power of the universe behind me, because the universe then wants to support me. Life wants to support me. So it doesn't become like my personal will or my ego or my this. It's the universe flowing through me, and then
Mm.
I'm in alignment, and then I have all that energy. It's not my energy. I can't generate that kind of energy.
It's a part of the intriguing part of what you do is your creation of your academy, where you begin to measure uh, how would like spiritual leadership, or you begin to you begin to help people become better leaders through spirituality. You inspire others. What was going on with you when you started, when you begin to think that this is something that can be measurable, this is something that can be modeled, and this is something that can be translated to others, and it moved from a selfish place where it was just helpful for you to where I can impact the world and show others this type of leadership style.
Yeah, it's a great question, and that kind of gets at the heart of it. I could talk about many aspects of what you said that I want to respond to. But first is just to finish my story. So, that kind of relates to how this whole thing started. So, I was in this dark night of the soul. I was depressed. Then I started to take care of myself. I found a way to kind of get out of it. And I was getting some meds also to help my depression. I figured out a strategy to turn the company into an internet company. We became an internet company. We went public. We were high flying stock, and I was running all over the place, and I was trying to relax one day, and I got a massage. I was like just trying to chill out so I can do what my job was. I was getting a deep dish tissue massage, and all of a sudden, in the midst of it, I was like feeling into my body, and I was like, what is this? There we think of consciousness, mind, and spirit, but then we think there's body and physical things. And then I realized, no, everything is one. There's no distinction between me. Everything is interconnected. I was looking through the face cradle on the massage table, and there's the floor. And, normally you think, oh, the floor is there and I'm here. But I was feeling like the floor was in me, and there was no separation. And that blew my mind and threw me into a manic episode, which, in the midst of this spiritual awakening, I got manic. And then I was trying to run a public company with a and the internet, and I was trying to do everything yesterday, and I saw where the internet was going, and it was gonna, but this is in 96, before Facebook and Google and all these things, but it was all becoming clear to me we're gonna have cryptocurrencies and everything. I had this download of where everything was going. I was trying to do everything yesterday, and my team was freaking out, like, we can't do it all. My board was freaking out. And I was like, I wouldn't take no for an answer. So eventually my board put me on a leave of absence and pushed me out of the company, which was very traumatic and shameful. And people stopped returning my calls. And there were stories in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, that Yossi is emotionally unstable. And they were right. But I was full of shame. Like I went crazy and I was excommunicated from this community of tech, CEOs and venture capitalists and all of that. And I was at the top of the echelon. And then all of a sudden I became like canceled. They didn't have the term
That's
canceled there, but I was canceled. Nobody would talk to me. So, long story short, I had to prove myself and start another company. But that got me to ask, what happened? Who am I? Why did I get so depressed? Why did I get so
mm,
identified with my business? Was this whole awakening experience delusion? Was I psychotic, or was this something real? And that changed the whole direction of my life. I went back to school and became a psychologist, and I heard of the term spiritual intelligence. And I knew of emotional intelligence and all the work that people like Daniel Goleman and others have done to measure emotional intelligence and show that emotional intelligence helps you be a better person, a better leader. It pays off in many ways. And up until then, there was this dichotomy between emotional and reasonable. But emotional intelligence said, no, 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 it's intelligent to have emotions. And we have similar dichotomy between spiritual and practical. And spiritual is woo-woo, you talk to spirits, I don't know, you believe in reincarnation, UFOs, I don't know, whatever it is people associate with it. But spiritual intelligence, I was like, is this real? What is it? I want to see if it can help in any way, like emotional intelligence. So that got me to start studying it, because the term was coined by this woman, Dana Zohar, a number of years earlier, but there was no academic definition and a way of measure it. And that's what got me on the path to measure it. And it started by interviewing 71 teachers across all the world's traditions. And what was amazing is that regardless if you believe Jesus was the Messiah, or Muhammad was the final prophet, or the Buddha was enlightened, or Father Sky, Mother Earth, like they do in native traditions, or whatever it is, they all spoke of the same qualities that they build and cultivate, the same virtues: purpose, service, compassion, integrity, gratitude, humility, presence. So I was like, let's not worry and argue, which cosmology and theology, is there a God or isn't there a God or whatever. Let's just develop these qualities that are uniform across all the world's spiritual traditions. Now, if you think of the word spirit, and I'll bring it back to your question about leaders and spiritual leadership, what do leaders do? I way back when I got an MBA at Harvard, and one of the first cases that they taught us was question was, are managers and leaders the same or different?
mm,
Well, managers manage resources, they make decisions, but what do leaders do? Leaders inspire, right?
mhm.
Now, what is the root word of inspire? Is
Spirit,
spirit, is breathing life. And you breathe life into the organization by having a vision, by having a purpose, by having a shared set of values, which creates a community that's aligned behind this vision. And that's what inspires everybody. So uh, so then I was like, if leaders inspire, and the root word of spirituality is spirit, that's what leaders do. They breathe life into their organization by setting a vision, by setting a sense of purpose, by telling people why we here, how do we serve the world, how do we add value to the world. And that's what leaders do. And when they do, they create aligned teams, and people are in community and they don't feel alone, and there's less toxicity and politics in the company where people are pulling in different directions. And so it all made sense. It was a win-win, because then the leaders start to feel empowered, inspired themselves. And when they're inspired, their spark is ignited, they're radiating this light, this energy, then people are drawn to them.
Hmm.
And then that there's a vibration, a resonance that ignites other people behind that shared vision. And the biggest thing we dealing with nowadays is loneliness. There's a loneliness epidemic.
Yeah.
And that's because we all believe we are separate. I'm a skin encapsulated ego, as they say. Like, you're there and I'm here. But in reality, in this moment, every breath I take,
Hmm.
every inhale, inhaling oxygen put out by this plant on my desk and the trees outside.
Hmm.
And then every exhale of my carbon dioxide is the inhale of the plant and the trees. So really, I think I'm separate, but I'm part of the same one web of life. So we're each cells in this web of life, in this organism, like a cell in the human body. Now, each cell in the human body has its own identity, its own boundary. It has to take care of itself, but it's part of a community of cells, whether it's in the liver or it's in the thyroid or it's the kidney. It has a role within that organ, but it's part of the organism as a whole. So it has to take care of itself so it could do its contribution and function. But if the organism is sick, if its organ doesn't function and the whole thing doesn't work, then ultimately that cell disintegrates and dies along with the rest of the body. So if we remember ourselves, we become member in this chain of life, in this web of life, then we have a role to play as an individual, but we're not separate. We're part of the one. And so when we take on that perspective and have that understanding, then our life has meaning, has purpose, and we're part of something bigger than us. And that's a win-win.
Yeah.
That's a win-win for the individual, and
Hmm.
it's win-win for the greater whole. And yeah, and when you think about all the problems going on in the world right now, you got political polarization, environmental destruction, uh, wars, loneliness epidemic, mental health disorders are skyrocketing, anxiety, depression, addiction, suicide rates, all of that. And at the same time, our human IQ, our human intelligence gotten us to the moon. We split the atom, we decoded the genome, we've built AI, artificial intelligence, that's smarter than many of us, including myself. It could do amazing things. And we have emotional intelligence, so I can identify my emotions, I can be empathic, can have better connections, but somehow the world is still a mess. So what's missing? I think it's this piece, the third piece is the spiritual intelligence,
Hmm.
which is wakes up. And all these qualities I talked about for spiritual intelligence, purpose, service, compassion, forgiveness, they all naturally arise when we're connected
Hmm.
to our essence, to our sacred spark. So when you discovered that sacred spark, it started to pull you in the direction of finding your purpose. So, our spiritual intelligence, all these qualities, and there are 22 qualities and 5 dimensions and so on in my model for my research and all the stuff I've done, um, all naturally arise when we're connected to our essence, and answer the basic question, who and what am I really in my core? Am I just this body that's going to disintegrate and die, or am I something more or different? And we call that spirit, but we can't really define it. But we feel it. It's our life force energy.
And it's funny because that spark is irresistible. Even if you want to deny it, like you had to go through the embarrassment, you had to go through the humility in order to be drawn to your true purpose. But that part of your life was still necessary because it was the road that only you could go down, having the degree from Harvard, having an MBA, being a go-getter, being a pusher. So now you're able to bring a new form of leadership. Because if I was to come as, I mean, started preaching when I was 24 years old. I'm 49. Next year I'll be 50 years old. So
No, you
25.
don't look it. Are you serious?
Yeah, I do yoga and meditation. So and
Oh, beautiful.
I teach mindfulness and yoga and all of that stuff. So it works. It really does. But at one point I was just super religious, right? So
Uh-huh.
I couldn't have this conversation.
Because you were in one lane, one dogma.
Yes.
But this is the point of my research, was to find the commonality across all. And the people I interviewed were all, most of them said, hey, I see the wisdom in all the traditions and I can draw on practices. So you could have a core tradition, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or whatever, but you could still find the beauty and draw on practices. I draw on practices from different traditions. I do yoga, I do Kundalini yoga, I do Buddhist meditations like Tonglen, compassion practices that are very beautiful. But my core path is Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. So, and then I also do something called the diamond approach, and I do inquiry. So there's beauty in many traditions, and but we can have a home base and we could still draw on different traditions and respect them and learn from them.
Yeah, I was a part of this Contemplative Alliance. Well, I still am. We started back uh, conversing again post COVID, and the beauty of the tapestry of all of us coming together and having these conversations that would sometimes be contentious, sometimes get really really deep, sometimes keep us all in awe, is the fact that we know that there's a necessity for this type of leadership that you are helping to introduce to the world. But then how do we get it to the world? See, you can walk into a room full of CEOs and say, hey, this is what's missing. And they'll listen to you because you've done it. You've been where they're trying to get to. Right? So if you say, yo, all it takes is to do this kind of spiritual model to help you in your journey, they're gonna say, you know what, yo, see, I'm in. Am I right?
Yeah, that's of course part of it. The other part of it is they work with me for a while and then they see the payoff. And I've had clients who work with me 10, 12 years or more, and they're like, and I've worked with over 100 CEOs, and a number of them have built companies with billions of dollars in revenue and thousands of employees. So, there's not this isn't just theoretical. It's just, and they feel it and it improves their lives personally. These same qualities pay off in their personal life. They have more presence. They're coming home to their wife, their kids, their husband, whatever it is, and they're paying attention. They're connected. They're not just on, because they've developed these qualities of, you can call it mindfulness, presence, concentration, attention, intention. So when people become clear on their intention and they understand the power of intention, I mean, the beauty about meditation is, with meditation you're practicing two core things, skills. One is attention, focusing your attention, and two is having an intention. And we get off the path and then you come back, and so you go into a meeting and you say, what's my intention today in this meeting? And my intention in this meeting is to connect and understand this person. Well, my mind starts drifting off. I'm thinking about my meeting next or my lunch or what I had for breakfast. My stomach is gargling. And all these things happen. If I have developed the muscle of noticing when I veered off my intention, in meditation, it's my breath or my nose or my mantra, whatever it is. But in a meeting, I remember my intention is right now to connect with, and I don't know how I'm doing, but I want to connect with NaRon, and I want to hear him, and I want to share with him. So if for a moment I'm like, oh, I've got my tea here, I'd love a thing, I'm like, wait a sec, you can do that, but come back. This is your intention.
And that's what makes
So
what you do so good. Even your explanations, because you already have an intention of where you want to drive the audience or where you want to drive the people that you're connecting to. Is Am I right with that?
yeah, yeah. And so you want to be able to relate to the audience, speak in metaphors and language that relates to them. But just to finish kind of the point I was trying to draw is that if you develop these skills of attention and intention in your business meetings and in your team meetings, and your employees feel you're present with them, you're listening to them, you're coaching them, then you go home with your kids, whether they're 5-year old or 15-year old, and you know how to be present with them, you know how to be present at your family table, you know how to be present on your date, on your romantic date with your partner. That's
Mm.
so important. Those are skills that are so important, that pay off not just as a leader in business or in government or in a nonprofit, but throughout life. And that's the key thing, that people start to develop these capacities, and they develop these practices, and they see their life transform because they're more interconnected to themselves, the truth of who they are, and then interconnected with people around them, and then I call ultra connected,
Hmm.
meaning connected to the transcendent and sacred dimension. But it all starts with connecting to that sacred spark, because when you're rooted in that sacred spark, you're connected to yourself, you're connected to others, because we all share in that life force energy, that spark. So when I connect to my sacred spark, I'm actually connected to you, because I know you share that. And then when I go into that depth, it's like a wormhole. I pop out into the totality, and I'm connected to the universe, I'm connected to the cosmos. And so anyway, I hope I'm making sense.
Now
I'm
you
kind of
you
all over the place.
now you are making sense. My last, I have two more questions for you. One, there was, for a large period of time when I was coming up, there was this huge gulf between spirituality and entrepreneurship, where they almost stayed so far away. But you're merging that. How does that feel, or how do you feel being in one of the leaders in this new vision of altruism and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a beautiful and important question. And yeah, you could think, oh, and most people live like that. Okay, I got my spirituality. I go to church on Sunday, and I get my little spiritual nourishment, or I meditate for 20 minutes in the morning, and that's great. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm all for that. But then I'm going to do a business deal, and now I'm going for the kill. I'm going for the win, and whatever. And then but you can't help but feel that divide, between my this side of me that wants to make money and win, and this at all costs, and part of me that wants to be kind and generous, etc. And so I feel torn, and I feel divided. Now when I'm divided, I'm weakened,
Hmm.
because part of my energy is going this way, part of my energy is going this way. It's like you're rowing on a boat, and one side is going this way, and one side, or you're pulling on a rope, and one side of you is pulling this way, and one side. But when everything is aligned, all your power, all your weight is in one direction, one arrow, then everything's aligned, then the universe is behind you, then all your energy, your whole being is behind. That's when you're most empowered. So if you can find your purpose, and then that becomes your calling and your entrepreneurship, then you're whole and you're passionate about it and you're not divided, and when you're doing it you don't feel guilty, like, no, this is my offering to the world and this is what I'm doing, and there's an exchange, people buying it or paying for it because it means that I'm serving a need. And when we exercise our skills to contribute to others, that's when we're most fulfilled. Our life has meaning, has purpose, has significance. I know I'm positively impacting other people. So, it's not like altruism is self sacrifice, but it's altruism, meaning altruism, the root word is alter, is care about others. It doesn't
Mm,
mean it has to be at my expense. So, and that's why I go back to that analogy that I like in the cell and the organism. The cell has to take care of itself to be in integrity to fulfill its role. Now, in the human body, all the cells come from the same DNA, from the same stem cells, but they differentiate. One cell becomes a kidney cell, another cell becomes a heart cell, another is in the brain, another becomes a fingernail. But it all has its role, and it's all coming from the same DNA, from the same stem cell, from the same essence. We could say in the image and likeness of the divine. We're all coming from the divine. But we have to find our unique role and our unique contribution. We have to take care of ourselves. If I don't take care of myself, I'll get depleted, burned out. I can't serve others. But if I only take care of myself, then my life is superficial. It's hedonistic. So this one sage said it, if I'm not for myself, who is? If I'm only for myself, what am I?
hmm,
And if now, when? So so altruism, I read this big book by this Buddhist scholar, I forget his name, about altruism, and he says altruism doesn't mean it has to suffer for you. It just means that your primary goal in doing something is care for others. So it's
hmm,
contributing to others, and that is the most fulfilling thing. And it supports our immune system, and it supports our health and longevity. And there's scientific studies I can talk about how it helps us to help others.
hmm. Well, there you have it, everybody. I told you we sit you only at the feet of the masters. Listen, Yossi's information is under the description. His website is there. Go to the website, get that clarity call if you need, and then go get the book. Go get the book if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to find that balance between spirituality and spiritual leadership. This is the thing for you. He maps it out in a brilliant way, and you need to have this in your collection. We don't ask you for Cash Apps, Venmos, Apple Pays, or any of those things, but what we do ask you for is that you hit like and subscribe. That's your payment to us. And if you're on a platform where you can leave a review, your 5-star review goes a long way to help get these conversations in front of the right ears. Uh, so now you have a choice. You can walk continuing in the dark soul of the night, or you can join Yossi and myself as we walk in victory. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk contemplating or thinking about tomorrow, contemplating about the past. Walk with your head up, but most of all, walk in victory. Peace.